Calvin DeHaan bashes the New York Rangers. We talk about the validity of his comments, and we also discuss what we would like to see from the Blue Shirts in the final two regular season games.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1289 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, I really didn't have a Calvin DeHaan deep dive on my bingo card, didn't have it on my agenda or anything else for that matter, but here we are. We're going to get into his comments in just a second, but right off the top of the show here, I just have to ask everybody, do other hockey teams go through all this? Like, I understand there's other controversies and there's other, drama-laden episodes with other teams, even through other sports and whatnot. I'm not sure there's a team in professional sports that throws you as many curveballs and keeps you guessing as to what's coming next as much as this New York Ranger team does. But here we are, a deep dive on Calvin DeHaan and everything that he had to say yesterday. Some spicy comments going out of the ice for practice just yesterday. And we will get to the comments in just a second. But I do just want to point out that Calvin DeHaan is not the first current New York Ranger this season to essentially take a couple pot shots at the coaches, the front office, whatever it might be. If you're keeping score at home, this is the list from least recent to most recent. Jacob Trouba, he was traded when he finally did really sound off on the Rangers, but we got that. Capo Caco call out the Rangers during the season. When Caco was made a healthy scratch, he basically, insinuated, and I think rightly so, that the Rangers, anytime anything goes wrong, you got to blame it on one of the kids. You got to blame it on one of the young players. You got to yank one of those guys out of the lineup, and he was tired of being scapegoated, and I don't blame him. Then you had Zach Jones. He said that he feels like he's rotting away. He had been scratched for 20 games in a row or whatever the final total ended up being, but that was getting pretty ridiculous. Jimmy Vesey, he lost his spot in the lineup this year and said he felt like he was dying this year or something like that. Some kind of verbiage along those lines. And now we get Calvin DeHaan. And so here we go. Let's just go right through the entire day here. The timeline of events from the first thing that happened all the way to the statement that DeHaan released on Twitter. Or we're at least going to do this in chronological order to the best of my knowledge in terms of what order these events occurred in just yesterday. So here we go. This comes to us from Peter Baugh of The Athletic. This is something that he sent out on Twitter yesterday afternoon. Basically said that DeHaan was frustrated while he was walking onto the ice and made a comment that he is just wasting time. And then per Baugh, DeHaan then had a conversation with the Rangers PR team and decided to wait until after the season to fully address the situation. And of course, there are only 2 games left. They play tonight, Monday night against the Panthers, and then Thursday night against the Lightning, and then that's it. Ranger hockey is over for at least the next several months. But then we also had a tweet from Molly Walker at, interestingly, the exact same time that Baugh sent out this tweet, so they must have been standing certainly in the same area. But both of these tweets went out at 1:26 on Sunday afternoon, and I'm just going to read the whole thing here from Molly. She says, Calvin DeHaan walked past us as he was about to get on the ice and commented on how it's all finally over. He said something to the effect of, how about the way I've been treated here? It's bleeped. And he did not say bleeped, but I have to say bleeped because I like my job here. The tweet continues. We asked if he wanted to talk. He said yes, and that he would be very transparent. After coming off the ice and having a conversation with the Rangers, DeHaan decided he wanted to wait until the end of the season so he could get more information. I confirmed it was his decision, and he said yes, but it was clear the Blue Shirts didn't want him to talk. And there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, to begin with, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a little bit here, but, the Rangers, putting a muzzle on him, how can they, what do they have to threaten him with, right? I don't know how they could really get him to talk. My assumption here is that they respectfully requested that he holds off on any comments that he might have until the season ended, and then he probably obliged here. But what's also interesting about this to me is that this isn't a case of, multiple reporters or one of these Ranger beat writers going over to DeHaan in the locker room and trying to get some comments from him, spicy or otherwise, because obviously this is somebody that's a proud veteran and has been a healthy scratch for 18 consecutive games. None of these reporters went over to Haan. Haan was just, if I'm understanding these tweets correctly from both Ba and Walker here, Haan was basically walking by the group of reporters and basically just shut his mouth off to anybody that would listen. So that's kind of interesting in its own right. And I don't really blame Haan. We'll get into why here in just a second. But I do want to say to Ranger fans everywhere, just be patient. I know there's probably part of all of us. We've got that morbid curiosity, and we just want to hear what this guy has to say. Because, yeah, he has been one of many Ranger players that probably has not been treated fairly. And I've got some stats to back that up. But let me just say here, as it pertains to Haan, obviously he came over in the trade with the Avalanche. He was kind of a throw in there. The meat and potatoes of that trade, as I've called it, was Lindgren for a second-round pick, and obviously VZ went over to the Avalanche too, but Haan was part of the return package for the Rangers. And it's not somebody who's a superstar or whoever was a superstar, but as I mentioned a minute ago, he is a proud veteran, 33 years old, somebody that I think has mostly been looked at as a consistent, solid, mostly reliable defenseman for the vast majority of his career. And we're talking about somebody that debuted all the way back in 2011, 2012. It's not somebody who's used to being a healthy scratch night in and night out. Even with the Avalanche, who, let me go out on a limb here and just say the Avalanche are a far better team this year than the New York Rangers. And we don't have to dive into the reasons why. You guys know plenty of the reasons. But they're a better team, and Haan was playing far more frequently with them than he is with the Rangers. Haan played in 44 games with the Avalanche. He played in 3 with the Rangers, and he's been a healthy scratch ever since. And on top of that, I'm sure Haan sees what all of us see, that the Rangers suck right now. They've sucked for most of the season. And on top of that, the Ranger defensemen have, for the most part, been really, really bad this year. Guys that are having off seasons at best and just downright terrible seasons at worst. And he has to sit in the press box and watch this night in and night out. The Rangers have given up 4 or more goals in 6 of their last 8 games. And one of the times where they did not do that, they were playing the Sharks, who I don't think have scored 4 goals in a game all season. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. And on top of everything else, Haan knows that when he came over here and he got into the lineup, the bleeding stopped for a little bit. Now, it was just 3 games, so it's a very small sample size. But these are Haan's 3 games in the lineup for the New York Rangers. You've got a 4-0 win over the Predators, a 4-0 win over the Islanders, and a 3-2 overtime loss to the Capitals, who have the best record in the Eastern Conference by a fairly comfortable margin. And, 3-2 in overtime, only 2 of the goals were allowed during traditional 5v5 play, during the regulation there. So, and Haan played well in those 3 games. The proof is in the pudding from the eye test, but also consider in the win against the Predators, he was a +1. Then he was a +2 against the Islanders, then a +1 against the Capitals. He even got an assist in his Ranger debut. And the Rangers in those 3 games did not give up a goal while Haan was on the ice. So, for that to happen, for him to come over and play well right out of the gate there, and again, he's not like a Norris candidate. I think we all understand that. But overall, the team was playing better. He was playing well, and he gets yanked out of the lineup for 18 games and counting. Can't imagine there's any chance he's going back into the lineup for these last 2 games, especially after these comments that he just made here. But to take it a step further, Haan against the Predators was graded out as the 2nd best Ranger on the ice, and against the Islanders was the 4th best. Wasn't able to find the other chart, but obviously he was playing well. Now, it must also be said, they shut out the Predators, they shut out the Islanders. These 2 teams are not exactly known for being offensive juggernauts. I think we can all agree on that, but facts are facts. Calvin Haan came over here, he played well for a couple of games, and then he got yanked out of the lineup and never got put back in, and I can completely understand the frustration there. And like I said, he is not even close to being the first New York Ranger to speak out about some things that have gone on, behind the scenes. It's just been a completely drama-filled season. But honestly, we're just getting going here with Calvin Haan. We still got to read his statement that he released on social media not too long after this news broke yesterday. We'll get to that. And again, I'll continue to have my thoughts along the way for everything related to this Calvin Haan situation. And at the end of today's episode, we're going to talk about these last 2 games here. They are meaningless in that the Rangers cannot possibly make the playoffs. And that being the case, I think the Rangers need to alter their strategy a little bit, alter their priorities a little bit. I hope they will. We're going to a quick checklist of things that we'd like to see from the Rangers for these last 2 games. And we're going to get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack? This is both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. The satisfying crack of opening each shell, it is like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, wonderful pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, for sticking with this podcast, sticking through this team this season. Rangers going to be back in action tonight against the Florida Panthers at 7 p.m. It is the second to last game of this god-awful season that they've put us all through. But, if you want to watch Ranger hockey, if you want to, you know what? There's the one reason to tune in for these last 2 games, Sam Rosen. And if you're a Kreider fan, definitely tune in for Chris Kreider too, because there's no guarantees that he's going to be back next season either. So there are still reasons to watch. And on top of that, we've got Matthew Robertson making his NHL debut a little bit later here tonight. So I think some people are going to be curious about that too. And hopefully the kids get some more ice time. More on that in a little bit. But let's continue talking about Calvin DeHaan and everything that went on here. One other thing here, just kind of like a side note that I have to throw out there that somebody shared on social media. So Bar Down on Instagram, hockey account, they had a graphic of Calvin DeHaan and the quote that he had where he said it's bleeped, talking about how he's been treated by the New York Rangers. And somebody pointed this out on social media that it looks like Pavel Buchnevich actually liked that post. Now there's no guarantees that it's actually the real Pavel Buchnevich, but if you kind of read between the lines from certain things that Pavel Buchnevich has said since he's left the Rangers, he's got no love lost for Chris Drury. So if he can take a quick little swipe at Drury and the Rangers, I don't think he's going to miss it. Again, I'm not 100% that it was the real Pavel Buchnevich, but I'd like to think that it was. It's more fun that way. Anyway, this is the statement that Calvin DeHaan released on Twitter, and it's interesting because he actually did this responding to a tweet from Johnny Lazarus. And Johnny does a great job, covering the Rangers. We'll have to have him back on here once again sometime this offseason. But I'll read Johnny's tweet first, and then we'll get to DeHaan. Here's what Johnny had to say. Calvin DeHaan doesn't owe the Rangers anything, so I am very excited to hear what he has to say about what he's experienced. You have to think there are others around the organization who have similar sentiments, but might not feel that they're in a position to speak out. It's nice to see a player willing to speak their mind openly. And he's absolutely right about that, because certain players, like he mentioned, are going to have to bite their lip on certain things that they want to talk about, but they can't because, they're still under contract, whatever the situation might be. DeHaan has no such restrictions. He can say whatever he wants at this point because he's not coming back to the Rangers next year. We'll go out on a limb and certainly suggest this. But DeHaan then responded to Johnny's tweet about an hour later here. This is what DeHaan had to say. And it's a little bit lengthy, but I do feel like I should read the whole thing to give everybody the full context. This is what DeHaan said. Going to get ahead of this now, I was hoping that I would have been able to express in a scrum setting versus a quote as I was going onto the ice and having it on the internet 30 seconds later. I said what I said because I am frustrated, and any competitor who says that they would be happy in this position would be lying to you. After playing 3 games for the team and going 2-0-1, I thought I maybe would have got an opportunity to jump into the lineup and help win some games. Did I help win those games I played? Maybe, maybe not, but we still won and collected some crucial points to climb the standings. I understand the youth movement in the NHL, and I'm getting older in hockey years, and I may not play every single night. I feel like I can still contribute and help teams win. I know I'm not going to play 20 minutes a night in the role I've been in the last few years, but again, I feel like I can still keep up and help a team in certain facets of the game. I'm not trying to be the villain or gain attention or throw shade on the organization. I would have preferred a scrum setting to chat about how my time with the Rangers has gone. As a player, you have to respect the lineup decisions, whether you like them or not. It's just been frustrating not being able to compete and do what I love to do. I hope everyone understands. I understand. And you know what? He was very, very diplomatic about that. About as diplomatic as he could be, more diplomatic than he needs to be, because again, he doesn't owe the Rangers anything, to Johnny's point there a second ago. And really, the Rangers, did they try to put a muzzle on him? Maybe. I mean, it sounds like the PR team at least had a talk with him, but they have nothing to threaten him with. And I'm gonna elaborate on that in just a second here for sure. But I did see some people saying that, oh, the Rangers, their PR team, they forced him to do this, right? I'm not so sure about that. It does sound like the PR team did have a talk with Haan and asked him to, hopefully not go into greater details, not bash the organization while the season is still ongoing. But here's what I was hinting at just a second ago. The Rangers have precisely zero leverage over Haan, which is why I don't think that they forced him to release this statement here. What are they going to threaten him with? Are they going to healthy scratch him? He's been a healthy scratch for 18 straight games. I don't think he's going back into the lineup now, especially after the comments that he made. He hasn't played since March 5th, so I'm not holding my breath there for Haan re-entering the lineup. Also, he's a UFA after the season. Are the Rangers going to threaten not to re-sign him? He's not coming back. Even if it wasn't for these comments, I could have told you a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I think any of you could have figured it out as well. There's no way this guy's re-signing because he's somebody who, again, not a superstar player, and at this point in his career, a team would probably look at him as the fifth or sixth defenseman, a bottom pair kind of guy, but somebody that can contribute and would be in the lineup, probably more often than not at the very least. So he's not going to get a big contract, but he'll certainly get more playing time from some other teams than what the Rangers have given to him. So what do the Rangers possibly have to threaten this guy with? I just love, hearing that and just kind of thinking about that. But bottom line, I cannot wait to hear Haan's comments because, like we've been saying, he's got no reason to be loyal to this team. He's got no reason to be anything other than true. I hinted at this a couple of minutes ago, too. The only reason why I'm wondering if maybe Haan will hold back just a little bit, especially if his agent talks to him, is, listen, dude, you're about to be an unrestricted free agent. If you go out and you air all this dirty laundry about your current team, then maybe some other teams have some reservations about signing you. Maybe it's just not worth it to them at that point, given that Haan at this point is basically just your standard bottom pair defenseman. So that's possible too. But man, he definitely sounds like somebody who definitely has something to say. And if he does kind of spout off on exit day or, whatever it's called, I'm sure all of us are going to be all ears. I know that I will be for sure. And, again, I think the amount of Ranger players that have spoken out about this team this season, it pretty much speaks volumes of everything that's going on behind the scenes and the way this team has been run. It's ugly. And I hope Haan gives us the full version of everything he wants to see. It might be a little bit of a watered down version. We'll have to just wait and find out. But couple more days here. What is it? Monday? Last game is on Thursday. Imagine the game ends on Thursday and he immediately just posts something on social media or goes on some tirade to the media. Literally the second the game ends, he's not going to be playing, but he'll be maybe in the locker room and he'll just immediately, he could post a video himself. He doesn't even have to wait for the media members to come talk to him, but we'll see how it goes. Very curious to see everything that Haan has to say. We're going to switch our attention in just a second to the final two games of the Rangers' miserable 2024-2025 season and talk about a couple of things that we would like to see in these last two games. I think these are all very reasonable requests. The Rangers might feel otherwise. And I think that most people listening to this or watching this on YouTube are probably going to be on board with most of these ideas. I can't speak for everybody, but just kind of getting a sense of Ranger fans and where they're at right now and, how they feel about the current players on this roster. I think most people are going to be on board with the majority of what I'm about to say, but we'll see. You guys let me know if you feel differently in the YouTube comment section or email me, do whatever you got to do, but we'll get to all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. There's fast and easy hiring as well. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Cost-effective growth. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by shifting our attention to these final 2 regular season games, the first of which is tonight at Florida, the last of which is Thursday at home against Tampa Bay. I can't even imagine what that environment is going to be like. At the end of a season, especially if it's like a valiant playoff run that the Rangers went on and they lose at home, you'll see the players raise their sticks to the crowd. Are they even going to try doing that? What's the reaction going to be? I mean, if anybody's still left in the building, I can't imagine they'd be cheering them, right? After this season, maybe some would. I mean, there's certain players you can pick out, and maybe I'm not necessarily cheering for this guy, but I'm going to cheer for this guy over there. That's going to be a very interesting environment, that regular season finale. But as far as these last 2 games as a whole here, I mean, to begin with, it just kind of feels weird doing this right now because this is the first time in 4 years that we've had any quote unquote meaningless Ranger games to talk about. They've been in the playoffs the last 3 seasons. And then the year before that, they had like maybe 4 meaningless games. And the year before that was the bubble playoffs. So there hasn't been many of these in the history of Locked On New York Rangers, and certainly not in the recent history. But got a little bit of a checklist here. A couple of things I'd like to see from the Rangers and some of their players for these last couple of games here. The first thing that I really wanted to happen, and it sounds like it is indeed happening, is that Matthew Robertson has been called up from the Hartford Wolfpack, and it has been confirmed by Peter Laviolette that Robertson will be in the lineup tonight. He will, at long last, make his NHL debut. And for anybody that needs a little bit of a refresher here, Robertson is a 24-year-old defenseman, just turned 24, I want to say in March. He was taken by the Rangers in the second round in 2019, 6'4", 201 pounds, and a lefty shot. And the bottom line, it's time for this to happen. I mean, I understand that by all accounts, Robertson has not truly excelled as a member of the Hartford Wolfpack. It sounds like the general consensus that I get in talking with people from the Wolfpack, or people that have obviously been to Wolfpack games and whatnot, is that, he's solid. He's okay. He doesn't really do anything to crush the Wolfpack, but he doesn't really stand out in any meaningful, positive way either. So just kind of cruising along over these last handful of seasons here. But this is a second rounder, and he just now at the age of 24 is going to be making his NHL debut. And even if he falls flat on his face, I mean, look at what the Rangers are getting from their defensemen right now anyway. So how much worse can it possibly get? And if nothing else, I mean, just throw this guy a bone already. Just let him play in an NHL game. These games are meaningless. You might as well see what you have. But as far as Robertson's track record with the Pack, he has now played in 4 seasons with the Wolfpack. All 4 of those seasons are 57 games or more. So it's not like one of those deals where, he plays 3 or 4 games and that counts as his first season. It's nothing like that. He's played significant games in all 4 seasons that he's been there. To be exact, 250 career AHL games for Matthew Robertson. That is a lot of AHL games without playing a single time in the NHL, especially for a former second rounder. So again, that goes back to my point where it's just time to try this. Just throw him into the deep end and sink or swim. In his 4 seasons combined, though, Robertson with the Wolfpack, 11 goals, 69 assists, 80 points, minus 30 in that time. And then this season, 60 games, 1 goal, 24 assists, and a minus 5. And at least part of the reason why this is finally happening, Matthew Robertson getting called up by the Rangers, is because Braden Schneider is going to be out for the rest of the season. I mean, I say the rest of the season. He's out for the last 2 games because he's got an upper body injury. Apparently, he's been dealing with this injury for quite some time this season. I didn't see an exact timeline, but it does sound like it's been a lingering issue for Braden Schneider. And the Rangers have said that now that they're out of contention, they'd like him to basically begin the recovery process. There's no reason to throw a banged up Braden Schneider out there for 2 more games. You might as well just get the recovery started now. And it's also expected that Braden Schneider will be ready at the start of next season. So that's some good news there for sure. Even without the Schneider injury, though, and even without Calvin DeHaan mouthing off, I'd like to think that the Rangers would have had enough sense to call up Matthew Robertson, understood the situation that they're in here, and tossed him onto the ice for these final 2 games regardless. I'm not saying he necessarily has to go in there in place of Braden Schneider and making Schneider a healthy scratch. But you could put him in there for Vakanainen, or if anybody's banged up right now, anybody else is banged up right now, you could put him in for one of those guys. Adam Fox, his injuries have piled up recently, so I don't think it's, imperative that he play these final 2 games. You could put him in for Fox. But knowing the Rangers, if both of those things didn't happen, if Braden Schneider did not get injured, or rather was not dealing with this long-term injury here, and if Calvin DeHaan did not say what he said, they probably wouldn't have done this. They probably wouldn't have called up Matthew Robertson. It's common sense. Like, there's nothing to play for. So just give your young player, your former second rounder, a look. What is so hard about that? But I have serious doubts that the Rangers would have done that had it not been for these other two circumstances with Schneider and with DeHaan. So, yeah, I mean, just kind of an overview there of how the Rangers do things. But, Robertson, we'll see what happens. He's finishing up a one-year deal at $775K. There was some speculation this offseason that he might not even be back with the Rangers. They did end up re-signing him. And at the end of this year, he'll be an RFA with arbitration rights. But I feel like these are important games for Robertson. I don't know what his future is going to be with the Rangers, but if nothing else, he can at least put good tape together, put good hockey together for any team that might be looking to, buy low on him. I mean, if the Raiders were to move Robertson in the offseason, how much could they possibly expect to get in return for him? And maybe some other team looks at the Rangers and says, well, they're clueless when it comes to developing their prospects. So let's go out and get this Matthew Robertson kid for a 6th-round draft pick, and we've got nothing to lose, and we'll try our hand at developing him, and maybe we can turn him into something. You watch that exact scenario play out this offseason. But I'm curious to see what Robertson can do. It's honestly one of the things I'm looking most forward to for these last two games here. Now, to be fair, Laviolette said that Robertson would be in the lineup tonight. He didn't say anything about the season finale. I think he should be out there for both. I think all the young players should be out there for both. But again, I put nothing past Peter Laviolette and his coaching staff or whoever's making the decisions on who should be in the lineup night in and night out. At this point, the kid should be playing both of these last two games, which leads me to another kid. I don't think this one is going to happen, but I would like to see it happen. Dylan Garand, the Rangers' biggest prospect as far as goalies go in their system. There's really no reason for him to not play one of these last two games. I certainly don't think he's going to play tonight because we would have heard about it by now. He would have been called up. Former 4th-round pick, 22 years old, one of the few bright spots for the Hartford Wolfpack this season. 38 games for Garand, 278 goals against average, a .913 save percentage, 3 shutouts, and a record of 19, 10, and 9. This is definitely his best season as a member of the Wolfpack, so he appears to be coming along nicely. One thing that's a bummer is that we're not going to get to see Garand in the playoffs this year. I mean, the bigger picture is the Wolfpack will not be making the playoffs, but Garand has absolutely been awesome in the playoffs the last 2 years. He's really taken his game to a whole nother level and helped the Pack win a couple of playoff series the last few years. So it would have been fun to see if he could do that again, but not going to get that opportunity. Bottom line, though, I mean, can anyone really give me a good reason why we shouldn't see Garand in one of these last two games? He's been called up by the team multiple times. I believe it's been 3 different times now where he's actually been active. He's been sitting there on the bench as the backup due to injuries to other Ranger goalies. The first time was last year. Igor and Quick were both injured at the same time. And then, Domingue started a game and Dylan Garand was up backing him up as well. And he was up once or twice this season additionally. And just haven't seen him. And I can understand why for some of those other games where he's been up before. But at this point, I mean, why not? Igor has already set a new career high in games played. I think part of the reason for that is the situation the Rangers were in down the stretch here on the outside of the playoff picture looking in and needing to win every game. They were throwing him out there pretty much night after night. But Igor's played in 60 games. His previous career high was 58. Igor doesn't really need a 61st game this season, right? And I'm not saying that as like a knock on Igor. I'm just saying, like, what's the point? He's already, like I said, shouldered a heavy workload this season. We know about how many times he's been hung out to dry. And, of course, Igor himself has not had his best campaign. But might as well just give Garand a chance. I don't see any reason not to. If you don't call up Garand, though, then I don't also see any reason for Igor to play both of these last two games. Maybe you go with Quick against the Panthers tonight, and then Igor can have the regular season home finale against Tampa Bay. Just kind of like a nice thing to do for him, I guess. But yeah, if it's up to me, man, I'm getting a look at Dylan Garand. Give him one of these last two games. I don't think they're going to do it, but I certainly would like to see it. One other thing here, too. We're going to lump in these 3 players together, as we've sort of been doing off and on this podcast. Gabe Perreault, Brett Berard, Brennan Othmann. I'm going to throw out something that I know the Rangers wouldn't do. To begin with, I should mention this. Peter Laviolette did say that both Othmann and Perreault would be back in the lineup again this season. And again, we don't know exactly what that means. Does that mean they're going to be out there for both games? They should be, but again, I put nothing past this coaching staff and Peter Laviolette and his stubbornness. So it's possible that, they're only out there for one of the two games. They should be out there for both. But, common sense and the Rangers, they don't always go hand in hand. I think we've all come to understand that over the last couple of years here, and certainly this season for sure. But part one for me is I want to at least see all three of these guys in the lineup every game, and that could go either way. Part two, and for this, we're getting to a point where I'm probably asking for too much. But I would like to see all three of these guys in prominent roles, all in the top 9 at the very least, and I want at least 2 of them in the top 6, preferably Othmann and Perreault in the top 6. I would love to see a line of JT Miller centering Brennan Othmann and Gabe Perreault, because Othmann and Perreault are both big parts of this Ranger future, or at least I think they are, right? I mean, the Rangers have spoken very highly of them. They are former first-round picks, and then they get here and they don't play them. They make them healthy scratches for guys like Juuso Parssinen, but I think they're still in the Rangers' plans going forward, right? So put them out there with one of your best players, JT Miller, one of the guys that I think is going to be one of the leaders next season. He's certainly one of the few guys on a very short list that could be in the running to be the next Ranger captain. So put them out there with JT Miller. I think Miller might enjoy, getting to play with the kids for, a couple of games here at the very end, and let them do their thing, and let Othmann and Perreault play on the same line so that they can start developing a chemistry between the two of them. Again, these are the two biggest Ranger prospects, the two guys with the highest upside. And so get them out there together, let them build that camaraderie. Sounds like they're already pretty good friends. That's awesome. Let them, figure out what they're doing together and just kind of start trying to build something for next season. Would it also be too much to ask for, now I'm really reaching, get ready for this. Would it be too much to ask to put at least one of these two on the top power play unit, Othmann or Perreault? I think my vote would be for Perreault. But Othmann, maybe he could do some of the, you could put him in front of the net as the net front presence. I think that could work for Othmann. Although if you do that, then you're not really taking advantage of his blistering shot. So I would have to think about that a little bit more, but put at least one of them on the top power play. Just throw them out there. What do you have to lose? This power play has been so bad. We know there's players on this team that have been checked out. And if you thought they were checked out before, I mean, now they don't have anything to play for. So what does that tell you? How it's going to be these last couple of games here? Just give them a chance. Anyway, we can call it there. The one other thing I want to mention real quick here, we'll talk about this more in greater detail in a future episode. Kenny Albert will be replacing Sam Rosen as the Rangers TV play-by-play announcer for next season. So I think that's a great choice. Kenny Albert does a heck of a job across all sports, and I think that's certainly the way to go. And Ty Henricks, Ranger prospect, is a national champion. He actually ended up with the game-winning goal in the championship game. We'll talk about that in a future episode as well, but we'll call it there. Once again, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, and I will see you next time.